This is practice problem number 5 from lesson 13, solving systems of equations. And this is unit 4. And in this problem, the authors would like you to use two different strategies to solve this equation. One strategy is to use the distributive property, and the other strategy is to solve the equation without using the distributive property. And when I look at these equations, I generally try to keep the numbers as simple as possible. So I try to make steps that will simplify the numbers and not actually make them larger. And in this case, I see a 15 and I see a 5, and I immediately think I'm going to divide 15 by 5, and that's going to be equal to 3, and I have a 3 over here, so I can get rid of those 3's, and I'm going to get this down to x minus 3 equals 2x minus 3. But first, I'm going to use the distributive property as the authors say. And so I'm going to distribute the 15 to x, and I'm going to change this to adding a negative 3, and I'm going to change this to adding a negative 3. It helps me keep track of the signs of the numbers. I don't get mixed up that way. So here's the 15 being distributed. I'll say more about that in a moment, but first, if I use the inverse operation, which is addition, then I can use the additive inverse, which is a negative 3. So this is the same. Adding a negative 3 is the same as subtracting a positive 3. And remember, that's a positive 3 right there. Same over here. Adding a negative 3 is the same as subtracting a positive 3. So the inverse operation and the additive inverse. Now, if I have 15 groups of x plus negative 3's, then I have 15 x's and I have 15 negative 3's. And if I have 3 groups of 2x plus negative 3's, then I have 3 2x's, which equals 6x, and I have 3 negative 3's. So here's the 15 that was distributed. So that means it's going to become a factor in each term. And if you change this to addition, then you can talk about each term, because terms are separated by addition. So here's the 3 being distributed. So 3 is now a factor of 3 times 2x and 3 times negative 3. All right, so do the multiplication. 15x plus a negative 45. So this is 15 times negative 3 is a negative 45. And you can imagine 15 groups. Each group has 3 negatives in it. It's going to give you a total of 45 negatives. That all gets divided into 5 equal groups, and that equals 6x plus negative 9. So 3 times 2x equals 6x plus 3 groups of 3 negatives is a total of 9 negatives, or negative 9. Now this is also the distributive property. The authors don't say that in their solution, but this is dividing by 5, and you have to divide both of these terms by 5. That's the same as multiplying by 1/5. So I'm just going to change this to a factor of 1/5 and distribute that 1/5. So 1/5 times 15 times x plus 1/5 times negative 45. And I'm just simplifying this side. So I'm not doing anything to the balance up here. I'm not doing anything to the balance of each side. I'm just simplifying it, or using the distributive property in this case. So I don't have to think about whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation. I'm not changing the balance. I'm not changing the value throughout. It is only when I get to here that I start changing that balance. So 1/5 of 15 is 3. So that means I have 3 x's now. And 1/5 of 45. If I want 1/5 of the 15 x's, I also want 1/5 of this negative 45. So now that's going to be one group. It's one of the 5 equal groups. So 1/5 of negative 45 is negative 9. That equals 6x plus negative 9. All right, so now I want to get rid of this negative 9. So because I've changed this to adding a negative 9, I can get rid of it by adding positive 9. So negative 9 plus a positive 9. So I'm adding the additive inverse, which equals 0 in addition. So this is now 3x. add a positive 9 here. Negative 9 plus positive 9 is 0 equals 6x. Now I can multiply by 1/3. I can get rid of this 3, and this becomes 2x. I can add a negative x. So x plus negative x is 0, and 2x plus negative x is just 1x. So x equals 0. The other strategy is to not use the distributive property, but to simplify the expression. So you can simplify this expression by dividing 15 by 5. And then you're going to get 3, and you can divide through by 3. So we'll get to that in just a second. But the inverse operation of division is multiplication, and the multiplicative inverse of 5 is 1/5. So this is the same thing. Dividing by 5 is the same as multiplying by 1/5. And 1/5 of 15 is 3. So now I'm not doing anything to change the value. All I'm doing is simplifying. So I don't have to worry about the other side right now. I can just work with this expression. I'm just making this expression easier to deal with. So now this is 3 times x minus 3 as a group. And this is 3 times 2x minus 3 as a group. So I have 3 of these things, and I have 3 of these things. So I can get rid of that 3 by multiplying by 1/3. 1/3 of 3 is 1. So this becomes just one group. So I'm really, of the 3 groups, I'm just selecting one of those groups. So I want 1/3 of these 3 groups. That's just x minus 3. Likewise, I want 1/3 of these 3 groups. That's just 2x minus 3. So now I have x minus 3 equals 2x minus 3. And I'm going to change this subtracting a positive 3 to adding a negative 3, just so I can keep track of the signs of the numbers. So this is adding a negative 3, adding negative 3. And so now I can actually add a positive 3 to both sides to get rid of that negative 3. It just makes the operations easier for me if I change it to addition. So now I have x equals 2x, and now I can add a negative x to both sides. And so I have 0 equals x. 2x plus a negative x is 1x, and x plus a negative x is 0. It makes sense. The only way that you can have x is equal to double something else is for that x to equal 0. There's nothing else that you can do. This is 1x, this is 2x. How can they be equal? By multiplying by 0. So x is 0, and 2 times 0 is 0. And the last step is to check the solution of x equals 0, see if it makes sense in the equation. So replace x with 0 in both cases. So 15 times 0 plus a negative 3. So once again, I'm subtracting a positive 3 to adding a negative 3. 2x minus a positive 3 is the same as 2x plus a negative 3 plus a negative 3. X is 0, x is 0. So 0 plus a negative 3 is negative 3. And I divided 15 by 5. So this is the same as making this 1/5. So it's 1/5 times 15 times what's inside the parentheses here. And 1/5 of 15 is 3. So 3 times a negative 3. And 2 times 0 is 0. Plus a negative 3 is negative 3. And it's 3 times that. So on both sides, I have 3 times negative 3 equals 3 times negative 3. Those are the same. Negative 9 equals negative 9. So this solution is true. So that means that the solution to the equation is correct. X does equal 0.